Hey there, welcome to this photo feedback session. So I love doing this for people. I normally do it for my in-person photography students. What they do is they come to a lesson, I show them a bunch of stuff on their camera, talk about composition, lighting, that sort of thing, and then they go home and practice the new things they learned, and then they send me a batch of photos like this, and I will give them feedback on their photos. And I thought, why not offer it to my community of readers, and it's really fun for me to do, and hopefully you will learn and grow through the experience, not just if I give you feedback on your photos, but also on the feedback that I provide for other people's photos. So here's the basic format that I'll follow. First of all, when I look at your photo, I want to say, what makes this a good picture? And then the second thing is, what would make it even better if you were to take this photo again, or if you took a similar sort of photo in the future. So the idea is not everybody understands why their photo is good, and of course not everybody understands exactly how to improve. So, having another person look at your photo and talk through it and give you their impression can be really helpful. I often will talk about camera settings. If it looks like there was a problem with your photo, that's probably not going to be the case in these photos here, but I'll talk a little bit about composition, editing, that sort of thing. We'll talk about the moment. We'll just see what happens from photo to photo. And let's start here. I apologize from the start if I mispronounce anybody's names. My biggest fear of ever becoming a teacher was that I would have to stand in front of a whole group of kids and I would never know how to pronounce their names. I was always terrible when I read a name for the first time. I'm terrible reading books, especially Russian literature and stuff like that. So anyways, these photos are from Kapil, and we've got two photos here, a couple of different landscape photos, so to speak. And okay, my first impression is I really like these photos. I suppose I like the tones in both photos. I like the sort of muted natural tones in this first picture here. And then of course I love now I don't know whether this is sunrise or sunset. They both look pretty similar. So, but I love this, and I love that we can see the city lights against the sky. And so this is a really important tip for anybody who's not familiar with this. So first of all, if you tried to take this picture at night, it would look very different. Of course, the sky would be very dark and the city lights would really stand out. If you took this picture during the day, all the lights in the city could be on and you wouldn't see them because the sky is just so bright. So this is a perfect time of day, like just before sunrise or just after sunset, when you can capture some beautiful color in the sky, and then as well the city lights and also reflections. Maybe the sun has not 100% set and it's creating some reflections on objects. So let's take a look at this picture, and so that's what's strong about it. I mean, I think let's assume Kapil got out of bed super early and was really motivated and got there before the sun came up and got this great photo. I mean, part of a great photo is the effort that you put into it, the effort of getting there at maybe an inconvenient time of day. Now, generally I like the the overall composition. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things to look at in the photo. Now, one thing that I think would make this photograph stronger is if we were to move, and I'm going to do a little bit of drawing here. So if it was possible to take a few steps over to the left and stand over here and look into the scene, still getting all of the same things in the scene, still getting this lookout, still getting these boats here. But what would happen is the more we move to the left, the more that we would actually be able to see the cityscape or the city line in the background here. It's a little blocked off right now, and it's interesting. It looks really neat against the sky, and I wish that I could see it a little bit more. And so also what would happen, maybe I'll do this in a different color, is the more that we moved over to the left, also a little bit less of the, I'll call it a pier, I'm not 100% sure what it is here, but we'd see a little bit less of this. It wouldn't take up so much of the photo, and of course we would see more of the city line there. So I would recommend, if you have the chance to take this photo again, I mean, if this is near your home, try it again if you can move over to the left. And so much of the difference between a good photo and a great photo, or even a great photo and an amazing photo, is just moving around a little bit, changing your angle, changing your perspective a little bit, maybe getting a little higher, which would perhaps make this photo, that might be a second thing, if it was possible to get up a little higher, and maybe it wasn't, then it might help to create a little separation here between the boats, and perhaps we'd even get to see a little bit of water in behind them, and see the city line as well. So just adjusting your composition a little bit, I think, would make this an even better photo, and it's really nice to begin with. Now, this photo, like I said, I love the tones in this photo, and I'm not sure, I'm going to assume maybe you did some editing. It looks realistic. I don't look at it and think like, man, this just looks fake. It's realistic. I believe I could be there. I do kind of feel like I'm standing there and looking at this scene. That it looks like you have cropped it to at least a sort of a widescreen format. Yeah, it looks like you're in the 16:9 format, which is a really great format for panoramic photos. If you don't want to go super panoramic with them, this is great. And so I can see you've got a really cool use of the rule of thirds here. So again, let's draw on this. So if you're not familiar, anybody who's not familiar with the rule of thirds, essentially you're going to divide your photo in thirds horizontally, but then you're also going to divide them in thirds vertically. And so then what you end up with is these 9 boxes, which you can see on my grid there. And notice that there are 4 intersections. And so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'll come back to what if we slightly recropped this photo. The idea I have in mind might not work, but it might. We'll see. So that's basically the rule of thirds, and the idea is it helps you to organize whatever is going to be in your frame. So we see that the sky takes up the top third of the photo, and then essentially the land and the water takes up the bottom 2/3 of the photo. And then it breaks down a little bit more from there, because we have 2 blocks of photo, or 2 blocks of the 9 here are sand or beach, and then also a bit of this block here, and then here, and then we've got this part, so this 2/3 and this 1/3 basically over here is all water. So the rule of thirds can really help you. You stand there looking at a scene and you go, well, where should I point the camera? And the question is, well, what's more important to the photo? Do you want more land or more sky? I think it's probably important to this photo to have more of the land, the beach and the water, than the sky. But here's what I think might make the photo better, and it's not necessarily what would make this photo better, but what would give you a second photograph would be to take a second photograph, but this time your frame is basically going to be this. So we're not going to see all this down here, and get another 1/3 worth of sky in the photo, because this looks like a very dramatic sky. And imagine if the sky continued on up here, that it could look very interesting. So you get less beach and water, but more sky. You still get enough beach to see the context. You still get the city line in the background, Um, but I wonder what this would look like with more sky. So so that's not to say that this photo is not right. This photo is great, but a second photograph would at least give you the option of, you could show people which one do you think looks better, and you may find 3/4 of the people say, oh, the one with more sky looks better, or they might say this one looks better. It depends what the rest of the sky looked like. You can see here that the city line has been placed right along the line that divides the thirds. So again, the rule of thirds can just help you to organize your photo. It's not something, you don't have to use a rule of thirds on every photo. In some cases, it just might not really work. You might not have the elements there to make it work. And that's okay. It's just a guideline. Now, what if we cropped this photo a little bit different? Okay, I have to leave here and go back and crop it a little bit more like this. And let me see how it even looks, whether, okay, so I don't know that I love this, but I'm going to go with it for now, and here's why. So let's bring up the grid again, and I'm going to move this just a tiny bit. So those 4 intersecting points, here, 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 and this one, apparently our eyes are drawn. We are psychologically, somehow we are drawn to this area of the photo, these 4 points in the photo. We're naturally drawn there. So if you can place an object of interest on one of those 4 intersections, then your eye is going to be drawn there twice as powerfully, because you're naturally drawn there anyways, just because it's an intersection. Even though you can't see the intersection, apparently when people test this, the eye goes to this part of the photo more often. And so then if you put a point of interest there, well, obviously our eye is going to be drawn to the point of interest. So we have this person heading towards the water. So I just thought that recropping it, we lose the original look, and I'm not even 100% sure how much I love the crop, because this area, I like to see the whatever you want to call it, the point or peninsula there that reaches out. So, but notice that I think with this crop, this basic crop that I've done, I think your eye probably does go more to the person. My eye does. See, I noticed the person before, but they were just there by accident. Now I feel like this person is meant to be there. I almost feel like the picture is about them, and you have this one lone person heading out to the water. You don't necessarily have to do this, but one thing that you can do in Lightroom is, okay, so this photo has been reduced in size, so it's going to be really pixely when I zoom in. But there are some distractions in the photo which are really not a big deal, and if you're a purist who doesn't like to edit your photo too much, you might not want to do this. But you could get rid of some of these things very easily with a tool like that. And some of those minor distractions disappear. You could do that even with all these people in the background here, but they don't show up very much. So just consider there's a totally different way to crop the photo, and you notice that now it's roughly split right down the center. So we've kind of lost, we haven't lost the rule of thirds. I mean, the thirds are still there. The thirds are always there, whether we pay attention to them or not. But we haven't exactly followed the rule of thirds as strictly per se. And we've got the horizon line or the city line right in the center of the photo. Okay, so thank you very much for sending those in. We got one photo by Rob here, and I think that this is an excellent example of great light in a photo. I think what I will do is I will link a number of articles that I've written that will help you with some of this. So I will link some articles about writing. Anything else that I think of, I'll link them in the notes here. So basically in this photo, we have backlight. And So the direction of light in a photo is very important. It makes or breaks your photo. Your photo will look entirely different with different light. And so the direction of light is one important aspect, one important characteristic of light. And we have backlight here, so we have a major light source right here and a light source over here. And I dare say there's probably even a light source over here. And the reason why I say that is because we see the light source skimming all the way along the seats here. And notice the highlight that it is creating. On the one hand, we've got this crescent kind of shape, and then we've also got a major highlight. We could even call it a catch light there. And so really the entire stool is being traced by the light that is coming in from behind and in this case roughly to the side. Also the person sitting at the bench. So on the one hand, they are, use a different color here. On the one hand, they stand out. They are very dark, but they stand out against the bright background. So this is good. We basically have a silhouette effect there. But then notice the highlights all along the back, which is helping them stand out because they're wearing a dark colored shirt and they're against the dark background. These very subtle highlights trace the body and help them to stand out. So I think that this is a wonderful photo in terms of the light, the direction of light, the backlight, creating kind of a silhouette effect, and the somewhat side light over here, creating all of these highlights or catch lights along these stools and separating the person from the background. This is great. I think, it works with the mood of the photo. I think so perhaps if, suppose this person was sitting across from somebody else and speaking to them, and they were having a heated conversation, and they were talking with their hands, big expression, very expressive people, big expressions on their face. Maybe this mood here wouldn't quite suit such an energetic photo like that. But because this is such a quiet moment, perhaps a moment of reflection or a moment of waiting or resting or whatever it may be, I think that the light and the mood in this photo is wonderful. So what would make it better? I think probably another strong point is the monotone. Maybe you could call this sepia, but basically you've gotten rid of the color, which gets rid of a lot of distractions. That's another strong point. What would make it better? I just wonder about the cropping. We'll close this and okay, so what I was thinking, I want to go with, well, you know what, actually, so here I'm playing, I'm experimenting, and I'm saying, what would happen if? And this is really important when you're taking pictures to say, what if I did this? And when you're editing, also, what if I did this? You may think you got the best shot ever, but you never know where what if I do this? You never know where it's going to take you. So try it. And we're doing the what if in editing. What if we gave this a different crop? And I said, well, what if we did square? Now, this takes us in a lot closer to the photo. Now, all of a sudden, I can see this person has glasses on. I can see they're doing, again, when I zoom in, it gets pixely, but I see, okay, glasses, looking down, maybe they're reading glasses. One clue is that now maybe it's just the perspective, but they look a little further down on the nose, almost as if this way he can read his book or his phone or whatever, but also look up and see the person serving him. Also another strong point here, if suppose the theme of this photo is something like solitude or theme or rest or quiet or something, notice all of the cups that are set out, but nobody's sitting there. It really, and all of the empty seats really highlight this. And again, I'm just going to give your photo a theme. Maybe that's not what you would say, but if we give this, solitude or something like that, the fact that the seats are empty, and it's not just that everybody is left, because all the cups are upside down waiting for the next person to come in. So perhaps this person is an early bird, maybe it's early in the morning, whatever it may be. I think it helps play on the theme. Now, I think I like this square crop. Does it make your photo better? Well, not necessarily. Let me make a copy of this photo. And then in the original photo, I'm going to go back before I started to crop. Actually, let me do this. And let me crop it without the top and bottom there. And then, okay, now what we can do is we can compare the two photos and say, which do we like better? Do we like the longer photo, the wider photo, or do we like the square photo? I don't know that it makes your photo better. I'm going to say, at the very least, it's an equally powerful photo. And, we've kind of cropped it. Well, you did this when you photographed. You basically split the photo right down the center. So I am curious about the rule of thirds here. I don't want to obsess over it, but notice if we did something. Okay, if we look at the square photo, and we look at the rule of thirds, we can see that the seats take up the bottom third, the countertop area takes up the middle third, and basically open window takes up the top third. And of course, this gentleman is placed on one of those points of interest there. So there we go. All right. And thank you. I believe that was Rob, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you for sending that photo in. That was Rob. Okay, Naomi. Now, this is my wife. And so now this is strange because she is and is not a photographer. Like a lot of moms, she takes a bunch of pictures of her kids. She documents her, she runs, she's really active, and she documents her running adventures. But for the most part, they're not, she's just taking a picture. Just because somebody takes a picture doesn't make them a photographer. Otherwise, almost everybody in the world would be a photographer. But is she into photography? Not so much. And yet, every now and then, she finds a project where you'd swear she's a photographer because of the way she sinks her teeth into it. For example, she was a birth photographer for 3 or 4 years. Now, she was a birth photographer, but hardly ever touched a camera outside of photographing a birth. And now she's found a project photographing friends who are swimming, paddleboarding, running, stuff like that. So that's a little bit of her background. So what makes these, maybe I'll start with these two photos at the bottom here. What would make them strong? Well, in terms of the moment, we've got an action moment. I'll link an article about moments below. There are all sorts of different moments to photograph, and this is an action moment. The person is swimming, so it's definitely an action moment. Interestingly, there's also a combination of time of day moments, especially if we look at the full collection of photos here. This appears to be sunrise or sunset in many of these photos. Now, I don't know if these photos were taken on the same day, but this photo here doesn't quite have the same kind of light that this photo here has. So the type of human moment you're photographing, which in this case I would say is action. Emotion is another big moment, but I would say this is more action. And then when you combine it with the time of day or the sort of the sun moment or the light moment, the natural moment that's occurring, you get two very powerful moments in many of these photos. So that's what I would say is strong about both of these, the moment. and the combination of moments. In the photo on the left here, so the photo, let's start with the photo on the right. The photo on the right, if we were going to look at, I can bring up the rule of thirds grid in a minute, but essentially the photo is cut right down the middle, which I think works. Do you need more sky? I don't think so. Do you need more water? I don't think you need more water either. So, this is a case where I don't think you had to give the sky 2/3 and the water 1/3. I think this is perfectly fine, sliced right down the middle. Notice, this is very subtle, but notice her dark arm is up against a dark background, and yet there is light. So this again is backlight, shining in from back here, that is creating this little highlight on her arm that separates her from the background. So that's good. That really helps her arm stand out and not look so strange. You can also see the highlight over here. And then, of course, her dark arm is out against the sky there. So in both of these photos, there is something potentially distracting in the background, and that's the shoreline. It would almost be nice if you didn't see the shoreline. How would you get rid of it? Well, on the one hand, you would have to get your camera down for a much lower angle. You'd have to be like right, practically touching the water. And it may even be the case that this photo was already taken from that level. So there's not much you can do probably to get rid of that shoreline. And I don't think it's that much of a distraction, especially since you have the nice light here against the arm. Also, what makes these photos strong, it's a face-to-face angle, meaning, Naomi got right down to eye level on both of these photos. So you feel like you're right there with them. She might have been in the water with them for all we know. And if I'm not mistaken, this photo here was taken with the Olympus Tough 6 camera, which I wrote a review about. I'll link that. And then this photo here, definitely all the other photos, and possibly this photo, is taken with an iPhone. The iPhone 12 Pro, which has the 3 lenses on it, the super wide, normal wide, and telephoto or portrait. Okay, what would make the photos better? I forgot if I got into that. Yeah. Another interesting point here, but distinction between the two photos, I really like the background element here. So what would make these photos better? Okay, this would be tough, but I think being like right in the water, getting the water splashing up against the camera. And so that's not to say that these photos aren't good enough, but take this photo again, but get crazy splashes against the camera. Even if you have to, you hold the camera right down near the water, and the iPhone, is, as far as we understand, is somewhat water resistant, at least, if not waterproof. That's how they advertise it anyways. So splash the water with your own hand, splashing it up at the camera, just to get that interesting foreground splashing element, almost as if you're swimming along with them. And so, you'd get all kinds of splashes and drops of water coming up. You might even get a blotch of water on the lens or something. And I just think that would be an interesting element. You can take this same photo over and over and over again, or you can say, okay, what do I do next? And I think getting water in front of the lens or on the lens is going to be interesting. Okay, now these other photos. So two things. The moment in many of these photos. So again, we have this with a photo like these two. We have something like quiet and solitude, and so the natural moment. Think about the water. So think about the moment that the person is having. Think about the moment that the sky is having. Also think about the moment that the water is having. This could be really wavy, but it's not. Instead, the water is very calm. So the person is calm. They're sitting, they're relaxed. The sky is calm. The water is calm. Everything works together here. So I think that's one of the strengths of some of these photos is, calm moments. These are not like, this is an action shot. There's splashing. The person is trying to breathe. We can see their mouth open. And of course, that's important in these photos too, is facial expressions. And the rest of these photos are, even when there is action, like a shot like this here, um, it's still very mellow. So I think, for the most part, things are really working together here. Okay, what would make the photos better? Well, take a shot like this maybe, and maybe it's a simple crop that would make it better. So we're looking again at the rule of thirds here, and you notice that she's almost lined up to an intersection. What if we lined her right up on an intersection like that? Even more so, now she's not quite at the intersection, but between her and her paddleboard, she's basically on the intersection. So now we've given the water its own proper third at the bottom, and we've given the sky 2/3 at the top. We've got our subject right on an intersection. So just a very simple crop like that might make this photo stronger. So we went from that to that. I think that just made that photo so much better. Now, we have a strange little reflection here. I just zoomed into 800%, so that's why this is so terribly grainy. But I think, when we get rid of these distractions, it also creates a stronger photo. We can still see a bit of it there for some reason. Anyways, this is just a quick thing to show you. Also, we've got this. This was probably a bug reflecting in the sunlight or something like that. So anyways, those are not perfect edits, but you see what it does. Now, one more crop might be to go with that panoramic view, and let's go back down again. So now we're, in order to try and continue following the rule of thirds a little bit, we end up having to zoom in an awful lot. And now you have this. And so, now you're getting a lot closer to the person, and, you may decide it's too close. You may feel like you lost too much of the sky, because you may want to make this person look you may want to make them look smaller, have a great big open sky. So it's up to you which of these crops really expresses whatever it is your photo is about. And I think it's something about peace and solitude. And so maybe that great big sky is better. This photo here, what would make it better? I'm almost, and I don't know for sure, but I'm almost distracted by the reflection, which makes me wonder if we were to somewhat crop out the reflection, it's going to be there a little bit, would that work? Maybe not. I don't know that I like that as much, so maybe the reflection stays. So this is just exactly how the what if works, right? What if I do this and then it doesn't exactly work? Now here in this photo, I wonder, so again, interesting kind of moment. The horizon blends in a little bit with the paddleboard, which makes me think, what if there was a little bit of separation? Or the other thing is, I wonder, what if you just got lower down to the water? I don't know if there's anything you can do with the horizon in the background on this. I'm not sure. I almost wish that the sun, now, again, I don't know that this would work, but I almost wish that the sun was up here, because for some reason, well, not for some reason, my eye keeps getting drawn to the sun, partially because it's so bright. Also, well, it's the sun. It's a sunset photo, so you're drawn there. But then, of course, also the point is the person on the board. So it almost, the problem with the sun being up here is it would be a different time of day. It would be perhaps an hour earlier, and you would get very different light. But and then you would probably end up with more of a silhouette kind of photo. So it'd be very different. So it's just when you have two focal points in a photo, such as the person on the board and the sun, the person's eye is going to be, those two objects are going to be competing for the person's eye. And so the question is, how do you lay these things out on a photo? Let's draw a photo here and think about the elements you have. So literally what we're working with is an X. Notice that the person and the board form an X or a cross. And so we've got to put that in the photo, and then we've got a circle, and then of course we've also got a straight line for a landscape, and somehow we have to put them in the photo. Was there a way to have the sun up here, and let's say the horizon down here, and the person on the board like this? Was that possible? I don't know. But this is very difficult because I know that Naomi was photographing this person. Naomi was on a paddleboard herself, and so that makes it very challenging. I remember photographing a father and a son. They were in a canoe, and I was in a canoe, and I had never paddled a canoe before, and I had to paddle my canoe all over the place. I had to work 10 times as hard as them because I was going for pictures. So I know how difficult it is to be on your own watercraft, and the other person is on a watercraft. There's so much going on. But just consider that in any picture, you have the major elements, the major shapes, a circle, a line, and some sort of a cross or an X. And you're moving left or right or up or down is going to change the way those three things appear in the photo. Okay, now, what would, and see here is an example where, think about the shapes that we have here in this photo. We essentially have a triangle, and we have a line, and then something like an oval here. And so I wonder, and then of course there's a lot of kind of echoing lines around here, but I wonder, first of all, I almost think if we were to recrop this photo, less sky would be good. Another thing would be if you could, I'll change color so maybe this stands out more. If you could move yourself, that doesn't stand out. There's so much color in that spot, I don't know if I can make this stand out. But if you could move yourself a little more to the right so that we were looking into this photo a little bit more, here's what I think it would do. I think it would create a little more separation. So you have your horizon line here, you have your triangle person here, because the board and the paddle and the person are basically creating a triangle. And then your oval would end up being more over here. And of course, there's a reflection of the oval over here. So notice how much more balanced the photo would be if you did something like that. Okay, now let's see what cropping this photo might do. And I'm just instantly thinking square. What if we do square? And then what I want to do is using the rule of thirds. Some people say the rule of thirds doesn't work with a square. I'm seeing a rule of thirds grid, so I'm calling it. I'm doing it. And here I think this is a more balanced photo. So without you even moving, just taking the original photo, I went from what would make this photo stronger to, thinking like, well, what if you had moved over, to, well, she can't move over, she can't go back in time. Well, what if we crop it different? So here we go. Now I think it's a nicely balanced photo. And again, you have your triangle, you have your oval, you have the reflection of the oval, you've got the line going down the middle. So play around with cropping. Personally, I think that photo just got a lot stronger just by cropping. And perhaps the exact same thing would happen with this photo here if it was cropped as a square, because here I think we do have good balance. So just cropping it like that. See, the whole right side of the photo, I think was pointless, because the objects of interest here are your triangle person on the board. And notice here that this is the very last moment of sunset. So we have so much drama going on over here. And we have her looking in that direction. Whenever a person is looking in a certain direction in a photo, you are going to follow their gaze. So remember that I had mentioned, first let's go back, let's bring up the rule of thirds grid. So if our eye is naturally drawn to an intersection and our eye is naturally drawn to a sunset, we're going to be doubly drawn there. But our eye is naturally drawn in the direction that people are looking. So now there's like triple pull or triple strength pulling us in to that last moment of sunset. And you know, the person doesn't quite line up on any of these thirds or the intersections here, but that's okay, because the person I'm going to suggest is not the important part of this photo. The person is there to make us look at the sunset. And of course, you know, we do see the person and we do see the paddleboard. I mean, if this was an advertisement for paddleboards, this is the kind of advertisement that doesn't smack you in the face and say, buy a paddleboard. This is a kind of advertisement that inspires you to buy a paddleboard so you can be out on the lake watching the sunset that this person is watching. All right, I think I'm going to leave these photos there. And let's look at, we've got two more people. We got Stuart here. And okay, this is a great example of two different sorts of emotional moments. We've got the high energy laughter moment, and then we've got the very quiet, soft moment of a child in somebody's lap. And so one thing that I like about this, so the background is important to your photo. And both of these backgrounds play an important role in these photos, I think. So we've got the very quiet expression on the infant's face. And in the background, you can see that there is a person here, but you don't see their face or anything. But it gives us context. This is not just a child looking quiet. This is a child who is content in another person's lap. And to me, this is a very emotional kind of thing. I think it brings out the emotion of the moment, the quiet, trusting emotion of the infant, and then, you know, the love between the infant and whoever it is that's holding them. And then, of course, the other stuff in the background would be very distracting, except that it's out of focus, and so it's not much of a distraction at all. You could perhaps crop this photo into a square, and that would help get rid of some of that stuff, but you might not like how that looks in the end. The one thing I would not do is crop the person in the background out. I wouldn't do that. I think so maybe a crop would make this photo stronger, but it's very nice the way it is. I even like the little catch lights here in the eyes. That really helps to add some life into a photo. And of course, the very soft, natural light on the face, no harsh shadows or anything. Imagine this moment with harsh sunlight shadows, you know, half the face in shadow or something, and overexposed over here. It would just look like a big mess. It would ruin the soft, quiet, emotional moment. So you've got two things working for you here. You've got the light, and you've got the emotion, and that is really helping to give you a powerful moment. Sorry, I'm so messy. Okay, now this other photo here, initially my thought was, well, I can tell you what would make this photo better. So first of all, it's a really strong, happy, candid moment, so that's great. That's what makes this photo powerful. And I thought the background is so busy, you really need to crop that out, or to, so one thing you could have done is when you're photographing this person, go down for a lower angle, get more face to face, and that would have put their head and their shoulders up in this area, and it might have been a lot cleaner shot. And because, basically you wouldn't get all this other stuff here. They would be in a, the colors are, there are fewer colors up here, fewer distractions, and it would look symmetrical, it would look really neat. So that would make your photo stronger. Now, but that's just one possibility. Then I thought to myself, actually, doesn't the background, the other thing was also you could straighten your photo so that it wasn't so crooked. But then I thought to myself, don't the lines in this photo and the busyness of the background, the slant on the photo, doesn't this actually highlight the moment? Doesn't it actually bring out the energy and enthusiasm of the moment? Lines in a photo can help do that. And so, you do essentially have a whole lot of diagonal lines in this photo. Most of them are diagonal. They would be horizontal and vertical, except that the camera is tilted. So, I actually think that it's probably good like this. And it's possible it would have been a lot better photo taken from a little lower angle with a cleaner background. But it is possible that that might have lost the energy of the photo. On the other hand, if you had a nice clean background with some symmetry, right, so very orderly, and then this energetic, candid moment, well, maybe that would be interesting contrast in a photo. So you never know, right? The idea is, when I take a photo like this, I'm going like click, 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 click. I would have got like 6 versions of this shot. And I might have gone from this crooked shot to, wait, drop down for face-to-face angle, and hopefully they keep laughing. And so even in the moment, train yourself, even though moments go by so quickly, train yourself to get at least 2 different shots from each moment if you can. It's going to mean changing your angle, straightening the camera, adjusting the background, whatever it may be. When I say adjusting the background, I really mean you're going to adjust your angle so that the background kind of moves a little bit. So thank you for sending those 2 in. I mean, I have no idea whether you intended it, but they're 2, very different moments, and a good contrast between those 2 photos. Now, I love this. It's vibrant, it's soft. Now, just looking at this photo, I see blue sky, but I see some haziness in the sky, some cloudiness up here. Oops. Do that in a different color so it stands out. But I see some wispy clouds there, which I have a feeling are over the sun, and I suspect that the sun is up here somewhere with a thin haze of cloud cover, because I do see some very soft shadows down there, I think. So I assume that's where the sun's coming from. So you've got essentially like an overcast light, but not deep, dark, gloomy overcast. You've still got the sun. Essentially, you have a soft box up in the sky for you, and not as deep and dark as clouds. So here's what I think would make this photo stronger. I love this path here, but as my eye is traveling down the path, it kind of bumps into the edge here. And so I would love if this path it doesn't have to be centered, but if there was just a little more space on this side of the photo here, I think that would be great. If you're a whiz at Photoshop, you could maybe, Photoshop a little, extend the tree and the grass and whatnot there. Personally, I don't know how to do that. I'm just getting started with Photoshop. It has just not been part of my creative process, and I'm challenging myself to learn a thing or two just to grow creatively. So yeah, and I think of that path, again, it doesn't have to be centered, but if there was just a little more room to breathe in there, a little more room for our eye to travel, because that's the important thing about lines, especially paths. Our eyes want to travel down those paths. So let us do that. Gives a little bit more room to not bump into the edge there. Okay, thank you very much, Stuart, for sending those in. And last but not least is Victor. He had mentioned a couple of things when he sent these in, and I closed the email, so I don't have it right now. But I think this is a very fun photo playing with the light here. So you've got, I believe that this is a Himalayan salt crystal lamp. I've got a couple of these in my house. And I love the light that is reflecting here on this object. And you can have so much fun playing with random light sources, little lamps and other objects, and practicing your lighting, and just see how they affect the things around them. This is a very soft light source because it's a large light source. So inside there's a tiny little light bulb, but the salt is actually diffusing the light. So I mean, it's not a massive light source, but it's a lot larger than the original bulb. Now, I wonder if, so if you like this photo and you go, gee, you know, I'd like to, like, I like this, I want to show it off. What I think would make it better is, first of all, if you could have hidden the cord, if we get that out of there, because it is a distraction. And then I'm just wondering what a crop would do, because you really have these two objects kind of kitty corner to each other. And so then I wonder, you know, just getting them you know, a little bit more like that, so that we've got this diagonal thing going on here. And then of course, if we could get rid of the cord, even if somehow we could lose the desk, I don't know, drape a black cloth or something over here to make it dark. But you know, experiment with this and see what you can come up with, because you've got some interesting light to play with. And the very last photo, the birds on the roof. Okay, so here we got a great action moment. The funny thing is, it's sort of an action moment, but then the other two birds here are, you know, sitting there calmly. So it almost feels comedic. It would be, now it'd be interesting if there happened to have been some food or something, some breadcrumbs or something on the roof. Just the idea being, we would know what they were doing. It's like, you know, who knows? Basically, this one bird is crashing the party. But so it's great that you got the action shot, that you know, froze the bird in action. And I think what would make this photo stronger definitely would be cropping. And I guess I'm gonna try the what if with a horizontal. I'm almost gonna flip it so that we get something totally different. And I'm gonna try square. See what happens when we go square. And we've kind of got our rule of thirds in mind. Oops, I want to show you what I did here. Notice that I worked roughly with the intersections. Now I think that what stands out more, first of all, we've gotten rid of so much of the photo that just wasn't necessary. You know, the rest of the photo doesn't really give us any context or anything. And I understand, you may think like, wow, we really cropped into that photo. That's not going to be great quality anymore. Maybe not, but good enough quality for Instagram or something like that. Good enough quality for a small print for sure. And in the recent Lightroom, I can right click here, I can click on enhance, and I can do super resolution, which will increase the resolution of the photo. So if so that's enhanced, that's, oops, and that's, okay, this is without enhance, this is with. Not a massive difference, but enough that you can now get a slightly larger print. But it really just brings us in now to that moment, to that action shot. And of course, we do see the one bird with its leg up, almost like it's bracing itself for this guy who's going to swoop in. Our eye, I think, you know, imagines the swoop through this photo where this bird came in. So just a little bit of a crop really made this a much stronger photo. There we go. I hope to do these critiques or feedback videos once a month. If my schedule allows and if people are interested, I hope you got something out of this. I do hope you come away feeling as though I appreciated your photos. I really did, and there was something strong about them all, something playful about many of them, and just very simple ways that you might have improved the photos. Sometimes just by cropping, maybe by going out there and trying it again, but also just anything you learned here, just keep it in mind for the next time you take photos so that your collection of work gets better over time. It is perfectly wonderful to grow as a photographer, to be really good one day and even better the next. I don't think we really get to the point where we're just perfect photographers and that's all there is to it. I think it's important to keep growing along the way. All right, thanks a lot.